main sugya in Shas about Tumah v'Tahara. The question arises, we said that in the fifth hour, you have to start burning all the chametz, including the truma that is tameh. So the question arises, do you burn the truma, the tameh truma, together with the tohar truma? Because we have a special div in Ishmartem Ma'od. You have to watch things that are truma that is tohar from becoming tameh. Well, when you mix chametz that is tameh with chametz that is tohar, truma that is tohar, and truma that is tameh, you're not watching the tohar truma from becoming tameh. So maybe you have to burn them in separate piles. Or can you burn them together? Because listen, they're going to be destroyed anyways. So maybe the issue of an ishmartem, the truma, tahora, doesn't apply anymore since it's holech le'ibud anyways. So the Gemara is going to bring proof from various cases by kodshim. So Rav Chanina Skana Kohanim, right? There was a Kohen Gadol, and then there was a Skan, there was like a vice Kohen Gadol, right? Vice president. Omer, Mimeim Shel Kohanim, from the time of the Beis HaMikdash, Lo Nimnu Melisraf Azabos or Shenitma, Bivlada Tuma, they never prevented burning meat of kodshim that had become, now the word Vlada Tuma, a dead body, forget about a dead body, let's say a sheretz or a nevela. So they are primary sources of tumah. They're called an avatuma. Such a thing, if it touches another person or kalim, it makes them a rishon latuma, goes down in stringency, one level. Now, a human being in kalim, minat Torah, cannot go further. Only food and mashke can go down to levels of sheni, shlishi, and revi. So meat that was contaminated with a vlada tuma, so it was contaminated with a rishon, so it made it a sheni. Ima basar shenit mabava tuma. So a sheni was mixed with a rishon, right? Meat that was contaminated by an avatuma becomes a rishon. Meat that was contaminated by a rishon becomes a sheni. So even though, now the Gemara is going to ask, well, I don't understand. You've turned the rishon into a sheni. Well, you already have a sheni. So, the Gemara will ask on this part, we don't see any increase in tumah. Tuma al tuma, so even though there's increasing tuma. Hoysif Rabbi Kiva v'Amar b'meim shel kohanim lo nimnu l'hadlik as Hashem and shenivsal b'tvul yom. A tvul yom is somebody who was tameh, a human being who was tameh. Let's say he had contaminated with corpse tumah and he was counting 7 days. And he went to the mikvah on the 7th day, or somebody who had touched a nevela or sheretz and went to the mikvah that day, you're only tummy for 1 day. You're a tvul yom. If you touch something, you are the status of a sheni. So a tvul yom, when he touches something, food or beverage, he makes them a shlishi. A tvul yom can eat meiser sheni. He can't eat truma. He has to wait until Herav Shemesh to be able to eat truma. So a shemen that was nifsa b'tful yom, which is a shlishi, b'ner shenitma b'tmei meis, with a receptacle that holds oil that had been contaminated with a tomei meis, which is an avatuma, and therefore the kli becomes a rishon. So they mixed a Rishon with a Shlishi, even though now that's certainly an increase in Tumah, and that's a Chiddush beyond what we said in the Reisha. Amar Rav Meir midivreim lamadnu shesorfin truma tohira imatmei bepesach. So from these cases, we see that on the 5th hour on Erev Pesach, if we have truma tohora, we have truma tmei, you can burn them together. Because you see that in the Beis Hamikdash, they would burn things even though there was elevation in tumah. Must be that since they've been consigned to the flames, Rashi says, "Hoil voilechas liibud afa tohira, v'asru midoraisa lo chayshina lishmirasa." We're not worried about being shomer the truma tohora, even though it says it's mishmeres trumasai. So on Rav Yossi, he doesn't agree. Eino hi hamida. You can't prove it from these words. Gemara will explain why. So therefore, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua hold that the truma tmeya is burned separately from the truma tahora. Now,
does that mean that if every degree has a different pyre to burn? In other words, according
to by truma you only have either it's tohor or it's tameh. Now we'll see. By truma you have a third category which is called safek, which is toilin. You can't eat it, but you don't burn it because it might be good truma. So far we know they agree. Shesorfin zulatzma v'zulatzma means if you have vadai tohor and you have vadai tameh, you burn them in separate pyres. Al manechleku ala tluya va'ala tmeya. Do you mix this category of safek truma with vadai tameh? Sure, Rabbi Eliezer omer tisarv zulatzma v'zulatzma. Rabbi Eliezer says yes, even that you have to burn in separate pyres. Rabbi Yeshua omer shteim ka'achas. So we'll understand that machlokas. So the Gemara, it begins, michte, let's see. Basar shenitma b'vlada tuma mai havi. Right, a vlada tuma, we said avatuma touches something, becomes a rishon, which Chazal also will call a vlada tuma. And now if that meat touched other meat, mai havi sheni. So kisar flebade basar shenitma b'avatuma. Now, something that got meat that touched an avatuma, which became a rishon. So now you're going to burn something with the rishon. What does it become? Also a sheni, right? My avi sheni. So sheni v'sheni. So my moisiflo tuma soika. What kind of increase in tuma? I'm teaching Daf Yomi now. Rav Yehuda hacha bevlad vlad askinan. So Rav Yehuda explains that when the Mishnah said vlada tuma didn't mean a rishon, meant a sheni, and therefore when a sheni touched meat, it made it a shlishi. So here, shlishi is being elevated to a sheni. That's an increase in tuma. Navile shlishi. The kasavar, and therefore the reisha is showing us that you can allow a shlishi muter laso sheni. You're elevating it, and even so, since this has to be burned, anyways, this imperative of es mishmeres trumosai, or whatever the din is by kochim to prevent tuma, doesn't apply. However, the Gemara doesn't understand any of this. V'ha'ein oichel metame oichel. See, a sheretz or a nevela or a tumas mace, if it touches a kli or a person or food, can convey tuma. But ochel cannot be metame other ochel. So just because the basar came in contact with the other basar, it doesn't elevate the tumah, because oichel doesn't have the ability to metame other oichel. Where do we see this? The Tanya, yachol yehei oichel metame oichel. I might think that food can be metame other food. Talmud loymar v'chiyutan mayim al zera. If water fell on a seed, And then nofal menivlasam alav, then an avela fell on the seed, right? It was hechsher lekabel tuma, tamehu. Who tame? However, ein osa kiyotze b'tame, but the food cannot turn around and make something else tame. So we have a problem in our Mishnah. This rule that oichel cannot be mitami other ochel is only applied by chulin. Ava b'truma v'kochim oisa kiyotze ba. Abaya says that by truma v'kochim, food can't be mitame food. So that would work, therefore our Mishnah. However, Ravada Barava Mishmei Rava Nami, they also said Damar Loishan on the Chulin Utruma. When do we say that oichel cannot be mitame oichel? That's Chulin and Truma. But Kochim, Oisa Kiyotze Ben Shapi, but they will make one Kochim food. If it touches another Kochim food, will make it Tame. Ela Ravina Mishmei Rava, the Omar Mikra Mole Dibir HaKosu, that when the Torah says Hu Tame Ve'enosa Kiyotze B'Tame, it's Loshna Chulin, Loshna Truma, Loshna Kochim, Enosa Kiyotze B'Michael Meimar. How do you understand our Mishnah by using it as a proof that it's being Marbek Tuma, but Oichel cannot be Matame Oichel? And for the Gemara, Mayaskinon, we're not talking about food, Matame food. Ikim Mashkin Bahadi Basar. There's a layer of fluid on the meat. You call Matame Machmas Mashkin. Mashkin can be Matame food, not Oichel, but Mashkin can. Rashi, Kishanoga Bavatuma, when this Kochim meat touched the Avatuma, Hayamashke Tofechaleh, there was blood on it, right? That's one of the 7 liquids. The Nitmaima, the Mashke then becomes Tame as well, as a Rishon. V'hava Afa Mashke Rishon. Ukesasorfa, I'm reading Rashi still, when you burn that meat with the other meat, the Mashke is still Adayin Hu Aleh. Umitame Abasar Shenisraf Im Zeh Machmas HaMashke V'nasa Shlishi Sheni. Right? The Shlishi becomes a Sheni because it touched the Rishon as a Mashke. So that solves our problem. Freik the Gemara Ihachi Hai Ima Basar Sheniba Babatuma. When the Mishnah said Lo Nimnu Melisraf as Abasar Ima Basar Shenitba Babatuma, it's not correct language. It should say Ima Basar Umoshkin Miboile. So the Gemara has to backtrack and give a different answer. Fine. Oichel cannot be metame other oichel midoraisa, but midrabanan miyu metame. But there's a rabbinic tuma, and therefore you are moisif to midrabanan, which is enough for us. Then the Mishnah hoisif for Bekiva Memeim Shokwanim Lo Nimnim Lahadlik. He brought the case of the shemen, which elevated from a shlishi, right? Michte. Shemen shenifsal b'tvul yom ma'havi shlishi. If a tvul yom touches oil, he makes the oil a shlishi. V'chimadlik ler bener shenitma. And when you burn that shemen, or you put that shemen into a candle, into a receptacle, shenitma b'tome meis, that touched a dead body. Right, the dead body touched the kli and made it a rishon. The kli touches the shemen and makes it a sheni. So my kamashmalan, then therefore, what is the addition that Rabbi Kiva is teaching us? That what? Shlishi mutter lasos sheni. We already had that in the first part. That's the first case. That's the Reisha. Sheni hainu ach. The only reason hoisif Rabbi Akiva would be to teach me something more chiddishnik. Well, you're teaching me exactly the same thing. Rav Yehuda. Hacha b'ner shel matechas askina. No, we learn a new principle that when an avatuma, like a mace, touches something metal, the metal becomes exactly like it. It becomes an avatuma. The Rachmana Omar, B'chol asher yiga al pnei hasadeh, b'chal al cherev, o b'meis, o be'etzem adam, o be'kover yitmar shivas yamim. So Rashi says, Hikish cherev l'chola. So there's, since the word sword and the word dead bodies in the same pasuk, they're the same. To teach me, matecha shenagla meis hareu avi avos atuma kemeis atzmo. The metal becomes like the mace itself. V'shenaga b'tamei meis hareu avatuma kamo. When the metal touched the mace, it becomes an avatum, and therefore, whatever that touches becomes a rishon, not a sheni. So therefore, according to Rabbi Kiva, you have an elevation in tuma. And therefore, avalei avatuma v'ksavar shlishi muter lasos rishon, because you are mixing the shemen, which had been touched by a tful yom, which was a shlishi, and you put it in a kli, which is an avatuma. So now the kli touches the shemen, which lowers it 1 degree to a rishon. So the ratio of our Mishnah elevated a shlishi to a sheni. Here we're elevating something from a shlishi to a rishon, which is a bigger chiddush. By the way, there's a famous tshuva of Rav Goren. There were always a problem. Is Harold still on the line?
Yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah. So there was always an issue. Could a Kohen go to medical school or
Right.
dental school? Because they had to do, gross anatomy. And so Rav Goren has a famous tshuva where the Kohen would wear something metal, which was nogeya with a tumah, and that protected him from acquiring tumah from a mace. It's a long, complicated. Everyone argued with Rav Goren, but based on this b'chal al cherev, he came up with a leniency where a Kohen could, be occupied with dissection using this metal concept.
Harold, you better buy yourself a couple of gold chains.
Are you selling?
Ernie, they
Yes.
were doing this. They're also giving this metal thing when on planes with the caskets of mess in the plane. There's a coin above. They were also using some metal.
This is the leniency of Rav Goren, but it's not really accepted. Most of the poskim did not accept Rav Goren's thing, but it's worth maybe one time in the Tzuvim Rabbanon Shir, we'll learn that tshuva because we have a lot of Kohanim. It's a very interesting tshuva, but it's based on this Chalal Cherev Obemeis. Okay, so far now we understand the Mishnah. The beginning part is elevating from a shlishi to a sheni, and now Rav Akiva adds that you can elevate from a shlishi to a rishon. Now, what forced Rav Yehuda to explain our Mishnah to say that the candelabra was made out of metal? We could say nukme b'ner shel cheres. We could be talking about a candelabra made out of earthenware. And what's the hoisafa? Umay hoisiv. The ilu hasam tame v'tame. Because by a food sheni has the ability to be metame further down the line to make a shlishi. So therefore you call that tame. Now, when you start with a shlishi by truma, a truma cannot be made a revi. It's the end of the line. So when you make truma a shlishi, you passel it. You don't metame it. We have to be very careful with our language in the sugi of tumah v'tahara. When we use the word passel, we know right away it means it's a shlishi because it can't go any further. Now, kotshim can go down to a revi, but by truma it can't. So the Gemara wants to say even by a ner shel cheres, you have a chiddush of Rabbi Akiva, because in the first case you had tameh v'tameh, and in this case you have a shlishi with a rishon, it's a apostle v'tameh. I don't have to say that we're talking about a metal candelabra. So what forced Rav Yehuda to say it's a ner shel matechas. So that we have a teretz for. Amar Rava mas nisan kshise. Because the Mishnah itself was hard. Because my area de tani. Why did it have to say ner shenitma bitame meis? Why did you have to say that the candle had become tame through a corpse? Nisne shenitma b'sheretz. There's other types of avatuma, sheretz, nevela. They also can make a rishon. Why did the Mishnah specifically say corpse? Well, this Indian of corpse, only that leniency of, not the leniency, the stringency of conveying tuma to metal on the same level to make it also an avatuma is only by tummy mace. Oh, based on that, it had to be a metal item. What halachic point is the differential between the original source of tumah being a corpse versus a sheretz? So that's how why we were forced into learning that the candelabra was made out of metal. So Amar Rava, based on that, Shmami no Ksav Rabbi Akiva, Tumas Mashkin L'Tamei Acherim Doraisa, that like the ability for fluids, like we said, to be metame down the line, that's not just midrabanan, that's midoraisa. Rashi, midikomer hoisi for bekiva ksaver tumas mashkin l'tamei achem doraisa he. Udulokani tanoi de pirket, not like the later on machlokes tanoim in our parak. The Omer will come on. It's going to say later on. She'ein mashkin mitame oichel menatoyel midrabanan, that which we said. That we said oichel is not metami oichel, but mashkin is. But that which we said mashkin is metami oichel, that's not b'natoyel mirabbanon. But that can't be in our case. Then my tosefes, what is the added tuma to ois Rabbi Kiva to Omar shashem and shayashlishi asu rishon? What would be the additive that now shlishi made a rishon umavekach? What's the difference? Hainer avatuma ki asau rishon l'hai shemen. When the avatuma, the corpse, touched the oil and made it a rishon, my mahalei, if it can't be metame acheri midaraisa. So according to Rabbi Kiva, mashkin have to be metame acheri midaraisa. The isakadai rabbanan michte. Hi ner, my kaman l'shemen. What is the tome candelabra? What is it doing to the shemen? Ilif suli gufei. If to apostle, an apostle of a coin, it's already a shlishi. But why? It could, maybe the chiddush would be that it has the ability to metame midrabanan. So imid rabbanan, my area bavatuma. But if it's rabbinic, why would you need an avatuma to be the source of the tafil? Rishon v'sheni by rabbinic tuma will also start off the process. It's none. Anything that makes a truma shlishi, will revert the fluid to become a rishon. Chutz mitful yom, except when a tful yom touches it, makes it a shlishi. So it's very clear that Rabbi Kiva holds that mashkin to be metame other foods are making it tame on a level of deraisa. Then the Mishnah brought a third case, Amrav Meir, that midivreim lamanu, midivreim deman, right? Because Rav Meir now, he took Chaninas Kana Kohanim said, I'm gonna refresh the Mishnah. Chaninas Kana Kohanim said you could take a shlishi, make it a sheni. Came Rabbi Kiva and said a shlishi could be made a rishon. Then, based on those two shitas, Rav Meir said, then therefore on Erev Pesach you can burn truma tmeya with truma tohira. That's sort of the progression of the Mishnah. And the Gemara wants to know, midivreim deman, who's divreim? Rav Chanina or Rabbi Akiva? Did he learn it from Rav Chanina, who made a shlishi to a sheni, midami? Hasam tame v'tame. There it was items that were tame and tame, that, right, a sheni and a rishon both have the ability to metame further on. But here you have truma tohora and truma tmei. Who says that you can take something that's vaday tohor and burn it with something that's vadai tamei, you have a requirement in the Torah to prevent truma tahor from becoming tamei. And in the case of the Mishnah, both items were tamei. Rabbi Akiva. So what, you're going to learn from Rabbi Akiva? Rabbi Akiva was a shlishi with the Rishon. But midami hasam pasul the tamei, hachator v'tamei. Like we said, a truma that's a shlishi is pasul. It cannot convey tuma any further. And then it touches with a Rishon, which has the ability to be matame. So there you're mixing a pasul v'tamei. And our case of burning chametz erev Pesach is tor v'tamei. So what is Rav Meir talking about? So Neima, maybe we'll say Ksav Rav Meir. Mas nisin ba'avatuma doraisa, because maybe the Mishnah is talking about an avatuma doraisa, and when it says it mixed with another tuma, a vlada tuma durabanon, that it's only really minat Torah, it's completely tohor. It's only a rabbinic zera that they made tuma. Dimidaraisa Torah ma'alya. So there we have a source. In both cases, both Rav Chanina and Rabbi Akiva, that you're mixing something on a biblical level that is tamei, which on a biblical level, which is Torah, which would be analogous to our case of Erev Pesach, where you're mixing Truma Tmei with Truma Tohira. Right? Umay midivrei Rav Chanina is gonna go on him, because we're talking about, Rashi says the Truma Torah b'sheish shows damya la yishlishi de Torah d'oraisa, right? When you mix it with a shlishi, which is lagamri Torah d'oraisa, it's only Torah d'Rabbanon. V'hanami shami Rabbanon atchila sheva, it's permitted until the beginning of the 7th hour. V'asir miRabbanon, v'kiven dashmin Rav Chanina. And since we saw in Rav Chanina matmin and Tumah d'Rabbanon, b'Tumah d'oraisa, that you can mix things that are Tomei miRabbanon with Tumah d'oraisa, b'tamin anami Truma Torah dasim miRabbanon, then we can mix Truma Torah that is also miRabbanon to do anything with, but Truma to Tmei d'oraisa. D'lo matame le miRabbanon. They know chamatame oichel el miRabbanon. So that's the source for Rav Meir learning that you can burn Truma Tmei with Truma Torah Erev Pesach. Okay, I think it's a good introduction to this sugya. Mirz Hashem will learn tomorrow night.
Difficult sugya.